I want to tell you something I have never said out loud to another person. Not to my mother. Not to my closest friend. Not to the pastor who married us. But I need you to hear this, because what happened in my life is something I still find difficult to believe myself, even now that I have lived every part of it. The child I adopted as a baby, the little girl I raised alone in my house in Cincinnati, turned out to be my own biological daughter. The woman I hired to cook in my home and care for my child, the woman who made dinner at my table every evening for over a year, turned out to be that daughter's biological mother. And the night that connected all three of us, the night that started everything, was a decision I made at 20 years old that I buried so deep I almost convinced myself it had never happened. This is the story of how the truth I ran from for 15 years walked through my front door, sat down at my kitchen table, and refused to leave until I faced every part of it. My name is Derek Owens. I am a father. I am a husband. And I am a man who did something at 20 years old that I told myself, for 15 years, was not as serious as it felt. I was wrong. I was so completely wrong that the correction of it nearly destroyed me. The correction of it also saved my life. I am going to tell you both parts, because neither one makes sense without the other, and because you deserve the whole story if you are going to sit with me through it. It starts, the way the most important stories always start, before I understood it was starting. It starts with a girl I did not know and a night I made a choice that I buried so deep I almost convinced myself it had never happened. It starts with a baby I had no idea existed. And it ends, if it ends anywhere, in a kitchen in Cincinnati, on a Saturday evening in January, with my 16-year-old daughter sitting at the dinner table forcing two people who loved each other to finally stop pretending they did not. But we are not there yet. Not even close. Let me take you back to where this actually begins. I was a junior at the University of Cincinnati the year everything I am about to tell you was set in motion. I was 20 years old, confident in the way that young men are confident when they have not yet been confronted with the full weight of their choices. I went to a campus gathering in October of that year. There was a girl there I recognized from one of my classes, quiet, sharp, the kind of person who always had the answer before the professor finished asking the question. I made a choice that night that I am not going to dress up with soft language or careful framing. I did something I should not have done. I told myself afterward, in the language that young men use when they want to avoid the full truth of what they have done, that it was not what it was. And then I graduated, and I built a business, and I moved forward, and I let myself believe that moving forward was the same as making it right. It is not. It is nowhere close to the same thing. I know that now. What I did not know then, what I would not know for 15 years, was that a girl had walked out of that gathering carrying something she had not asked for and did not deserve, and that she had carried it entirely alone, and that the cost of what I had done was still being paid in ways I could not see from the comfortable distance of my own life. If this story already has you, stay with it, because where this goes is something I could not have written if I tried. Subscribe to Hidden Intent Stories and hit the bell. You do not want to miss what comes next. I adopted Zoe on a December morning when she was 4 months old, and I drove her home gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my hands ached by the time we reached Hyde Park. My mother was in the passenger seat talking without stopping, which is what she does when she is trying not to cry, and I was grateful for the sound of her voice because the silence of my own chest was loud enough without adding to it. I had converted the spare bedroom into a nursery. I had read 4 books on infant development. I had installed the car seat 3 times. I was prepared for everything measurable and completely unprepared for the feeling of carrying her into that house for the first time, setting her down in the crib, and understanding that this was the most important thing I had ever done and I had no blueprint for it whatsoever. People asked me, for years, why I had adopted alone and unmarried. The honest answer is that I grew up in a house that was technically full and practically empty, 2 parents working opposite shifts, a child moving through the space between their schedules with a lot of independence and not enough company. I did not want to build that house again. I did not want to keep filling my life with work and quarterly reports and business strategy while something essential went unbuilt. I walked into the adoption agency on a Tuesday afternoon because I had nowhere else to be and something in me had gotten tired of the silence, and I walked out with a folder of paperwork and a process that would change every single thing about my life. I have no more complicated explanation than that. Sometimes the most important decisions happen without a plan. I named her Zoe because it meant life, and because before she was old enough to understand the concept of a gift, she had already given me mine. I told her she was adopted when she was 4, sitting on the back porch with juice boxes, because I believed then and believe now that children deserve the truth in whatever form they are old enough to hold it. She nodded and asked for macaroni. I said yes. For a while, that was enough. By the time she was 14 it was not enough, and she started asking the questions I had always known were coming, about her birth mother, about why, about the real why, not the gentle version. I answered everything I could. I was honest about everything I could not. I did not have many details. The agency file was limited. Her birth mother had left no contact information. I did not know then that her birth mother was a woman named Camille Hartley. I did not know that Camille Hartley had grown up in the same city I had, attended the same university I had, and was, at that very moment, building a life in Cincinnati with the same quiet relentlessness she had been applying to everything since she was 19 years old, and survival was the only item on her agenda. I did not know any of it. I was simply a father with a daughter who had questions I could not answer, doing the best I could with what I had, the way parents do. That was about to change. Zoe was 14 when she told me, with characteristic directness, that the quality of dinner in our house had become concerning. She said it exactly like that, concerning, and then looked at me with an expression that suggested she had been sitting on the observation for some time and had finally decided I could handle it. She was not wrong. Running a logistics consulting firm and raising a teenager simultaneously had done things to my cooking that I was not proud of. I contacted a domestic staffing agency. They sent 3 candidates. The second one arrived on a Tuesday morning, cooked a trial meal that I am genuinely not exaggerating when I say was the best thing I had eaten in years, and was offered the position before she reached her car. Her name was Camille Hartley. She was 34 years old, precise, professional, and deeply unbothered by my attempts at professional small talk during the trial meal. Zoe sat at the kitchen counter the entire time, watching, and said at the end that the rice was correct. I learned later that this was Zoe's highest available endorsement. Camille accepted the position that afternoon. She moved into the ground floor guest suite that came with the role, and within 2 weeks the house in Hyde Park had become something it had never quite been before, a place that felt, in some quality I could not immediately name, complete. She was extraordinary at what she did. Not just the cooking, which was consistent and excellent, but the entire management of the household, the kind of quiet competence that makes everything around it run better without drawing attention to itself. She helped Zoe with the homework subjects I struggled with, the essays, the historical arguments, anything that required a feeling to become a structure. She maintained the house to a standard that I found personally embarrassing given my previous efforts. She was professional and warm and entirely clear about the boundaries of what the role was and was not. I respected that. I tried very hard, for several months, to feel nothing beyond respect. I was not successful. The feeling came the way feelings come when you are not looking for them, incrementally, and then all at once, and then impossible to unfind. I noticed that the evenings when I traveled for work felt different from the evenings when I was home, and that the difference had a specific source. I noticed that I listened, without meaning to, for the sound of her moving through the house, because that sound had come to mean something to me that I had no professional justification for. I noticed that I cared, specifically, personally, in a way that had nothing to do with the position she held, whether she was happy in this house. I did not say any of this. I was her employer. She lived under my roof. There were about 100 reasons why I kept everything I was feeling exactly where it was, and I honored every one of them. But the feeling was there every single day, and it was not going anywhere. What I did not know was that Camille was doing the same thing from her side of the house, feeling something she had no professional justification for in keeping it exactly where it was. I did not know that yet. I would find out later, and the finding out would be one of the smaller surprises in a year full of much larger ones. Stay with me, because the part that changes everything is coming, and I promise you are not ready for it. Subscribe to Hidden Intent Stories and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Zoe turned 16 in February and spent her birthday dinner asking Camille questions about cooking that I knew, after 16 years of parenting her, were not really about cooking. Zoe has always approached the things she actually wants to say through a series of adjacent conversations, building toward the real subject from a safe angle. By the end of the meal I understood that what she actually wanted to say was that Camille felt like family. Camille said, carefully, that she felt very much at home in this house. Zoe nodded as if this confirmed something she had already decided. I refilled everyone's water and said nothing, because some things need to move at their own pace and I have learned, slowly, to recognize which things those are. The accident happened in October, on a Wednesday evening. I was away for a work trip, a 2-day conference in Columbus that I had attended every year for a decade. Camille was alone in the kitchen when a cabinet door swung back and caught her forearm in a way that was worse than it initially appeared. She pressed a dish towel against it and waited, and then she stopped waiting and called me, because my number was at the top of her recent calls from a work discussion that afternoon. I answered on the second ring. I heard something in her voice that moved me out of the hotel room and into the elevator before I had finished processing what she was saying. I called Zoe on the way to the car and told her I was coming home. Zoe asked if Camille was okay. I said I did not know yet. Zoe said she was coming too, in the voice she uses when she is not asking. We reached Camille's apartment in under 15 minutes. Zoe saw the blood first and did not panic, which I noted and filed away for later because it told me something about her I had not seen in quite that way before. We got Camille into the car. I drove. The emergency room moved quickly, assessed the laceration, and told us she had lost enough blood to need a transfusion. They asked about type. The blood bank had it, but the processing time was longer than the doctor wanted. I offered immediately. Wrong type. Zoe asked, quietly, if she could be checked. I looked at her. She said she wanted to help, in the voice that means she has already decided. The nurse checked her type. It matched Camille exactly. B positive. The compatibility screening confirmed she was a strong candidate. I watched my daughter sit in the donation chair and watched the line and thought about nothing except that I was glad we had come quickly. Zoe was quiet the whole drive home. She ate the sandwich I made her. She said goodnight. She went to her room. I assumed she was tired. I was wrong. She was thinking. Zoe, when she goes quiet like that, is always thinking, and the thinking she was doing that night would not be finished for another 29 days. I did not know what Zoe was doing until she placed a printed laboratory report on the kitchen table and sat across from me on a Sunday morning and told me all of it, the hair sample she had taken from Camille's jacket, the DNA ancestry kit, the private lab, every step in the exact order she had taken it. She told me without apology for the method and with complete honesty about why she had done it, which was that she needed to know before she could decide anything else, and this was the only road she could find. She told me the results said that Camille Hartley was her biological mother at 99.998% certainty. She then told me that she wanted to tell Camille, and that she wanted to tell her everything, the method, the result, all of it, no omissions. I told her that was exactly right. I told her I was proud of her. I meant both things completely. Camille came to the house the following Saturday. She sat at the kitchen table. She accepted coffee. And Zoe told her, clearly, gently, completely, what she had found and how she had found it and what she needed to know. She placed the report between them. Camille went very still. I watched her face move through several things at once, and I watched her look at Zoe, really look at her, the way you look at something you recognize but cannot immediately place, and I watched the stillness become something else. She told us the truth. All of it. The university. The gathering. The drink. What she had woken up to. The 6 weeks. The clinic. The 11 minutes she had held the baby. The 3 days with the door locked. The 15 years of carrying it through every city and every job and every quiet evening alone. I sat across from them and I listened to every word. And as Camille spoke, as she described the university and the year and the gathering and the October night, something happened to me that I am going to try to describe as accurately as I can, because it deserves accuracy. It was not gradual. It was immediate. Recognition, landing in my chest like something physical. The University of Cincinnati. Junior year. October. A campus gathering. A girl from one of my classes. I knew exactly what she was describing. I had been there. I was the one she was describing. And I had spent 15 years calling it something smaller than what it was, and now the full truth of it was sitting across from me in my own kitchen, in the person of a woman who had carried the cost of my choice alone for 15 years, and I could not breathe. I excused myself. I said I needed a moment. I went upstairs and I sat on the edge of my bed and I held the full weight of what I had just understood for the first time without any of the protective language I had been using for 15 years to keep it at a manageable distance. There was no distance anymore. It was here. It was real. And the woman downstairs, who had cooked in my kitchen for a year, who my daughter loved, who I loved, that woman had paid the price of something I had done and walked away from and refused to fully name, and I had to decide what kind of man I was going to be about it. I know this is heavy. Stay with me. This is the part where everything either breaks completely or becomes something real. Subscribe to Hidden Intent Stories, and if this story is speaking to you, share it right now. I ordered a private paternity test that same week. I already knew what it would say. I needed it in writing because I am a man who requires evidence before he acts, and because what I was about to do required a foundation more solid than a feeling, however certain the feeling was. The results came back in 9 days. I read them once. I folded the paper. I put it in my jacket pocket and I carried it for 4 more days, not because I doubted it but because I needed to find the words for what I had to do next, and the right words for something this serious do not come quickly. I asked Camille to sit with me in the living room on a Thursday evening after Zoe had gone to bed. I put both reports on the table in front of her, hers and mine. And I told her everything. I told her I had been at that gathering. I told her what I had done. I told her how I had described it to myself for 15 years and why that description was wrong and what the right description was. I told her the DNA confirmed I was Zoe's biological father. I told her I was sorry, not quickly, not as a formality, but specifically and at length, naming every part of what I had taken from her and what she had been made to carry because of it. I did not ask her to forgive me that night. I did not ask her for anything. I simply put the truth on the table and I let it be what it was. She looked at me for a moment that felt much longer than it was. And then she said, in a voice that was quiet and completely clear, "You are the one who put me in this condition." 7 words. I have heard a great many things in my life that affected me deeply. Nothing has ever landed the way those 7 words landed. She said everything after it, the scholarship, the hiding, the clinic, the 11 minutes, the 3 days, the 15 years, and I sat across from her and I did not look away and I did not say a word, because she had not been able to say any of it for 15 years and I owed her every second of the space it required. She cried. The kind of crying that is something leaving the body after being held too long, deep and necessary and completely beyond management. I did not move toward her. I did not speak. I simply stayed, because staying was the only thing I could offer that was worth anything. When she finished she said she needed time. I said she could have as much as she needed. She went to her room. I stayed in the living room until the house was completely quiet and then I stayed a little longer, because I needed to sit with what I had done, not perform the sitting, not manage it, but actually be inside it, without comfort, for as long as it took. I think it took until almost 4 in the morning. I am not entirely sure. What I am sure of is that it was the most honest night of my adult life. The weeks that followed were the most difficult in that house since I had carried Zoe through the door as an infant. Camille stayed. I did not ask her to stay and I would not have asked, but she stayed, and I am still grateful for it in a way I cannot fully put into words. She continued to cook and to keep the house and to be present for Zoe in all the ways she had been before, because the work was still the work and Zoe still needed what Zoe needed, and Camille was not a woman who let personal difficulty become professional failure. But the evenings were different. The ease we had built over the previous year was gone, replaced by a careful distance that we both maintained without discussing it, moving through the shared spaces of the house with a new and serious awareness of each other. I did not push. I apologized one more time, specifically and without asking for anything in return, one morning when we were briefly alone in the kitchen, and then I let it rest, because I understood that saying it again and again would not make it more true and might make it feel like pressure, and she deserved freedom from pressure more than she deserved my repeated discomfort with the silence. I focused on being what I had always been, reliable, present, consistent, because it was the only thing I knew how to offer that had any real value. Forgiveness, when it came, did not arrive as a single moment. Camille knocked on the living room door one evening in December, sat across from me, and said, "I forgive you." She said it because she meant it, not because she had been convinced or persuaded or worn down by time. She said it in the same voice she used for things she had decided completely. I did not cry, because that is not how I am made. But I held very still for a moment in a way that meant the same thing. I said thank you. She nodded. We both understood that this was a beginning. What neither of us knew was that someone else in the house had already decided exactly where the beginning was going, and she was not planning to wait much longer for us to figure it out ourselves. Zoe knew everything by this point. She knew I was her biological father. She knew Camille was her biological mother. She knew the full story of how the three of us had been connected long before any of us understood it. She had sat with all of it, the weight of it, the strangeness of it, the extraordinary and painful and unlikely shape of it, and she had arrived, with the same quiet certainty she brought to everything, at a conclusion. The conclusion was that her parents were taking an unreasonable amount of time to do what was obvious, and that someone needed to intervene. She had apparently nominated herself. It happened on a Saturday evening in January. Camille had made her roast chicken, which was the meal Zoe requested every time she was given a choice, and the three of us were sitting at the dinner table the way we had sat at dinner tables for over a year, passing dishes, talking about Zoe's week at school, moving through the ordinary rhythms of an evening meal. Everything appeared completely normal. I should have known, with 16 years of parenting this particular child, that when everything appears completely normal around Zoe, something is usually about to happen. She waited until we were all mid-meal. Then she set down her fork, looked directly at me, and said, "Dad. Why haven't you proposed to Mom?" The table went very quiet. I looked at Zoe. Camille looked at Zoe. Zoe looked at both of us with the expression she uses when she has asked a perfectly reasonable question and is waiting for a perfectly reasonable answer and does not understand why one has not yet arrived. Before either of us could speak, she turned to Camille and said, "Don't you like my dad?" "Because he likes you. He has liked you for a long time. Everyone can see it except apparently the two of you." Camille looked at her for a moment. Then she looked at me. I looked back at her. And I understood, sitting at that dinner table with roast chicken going cold on my plate and my 16-year-old watching me with absolutely no patience for hesitation, that Zoe was right. She was completely and entirely right, the way she was usually right about things she had thought about carefully, and I had been using every reasonable justification available to me to avoid doing the thing I had wanted to do for months. I pushed back my chair. I stood up. I did not have a ring, I want to be honest about that, because this was not a planned moment and I am not a man who does things he has not planned, which made what happened next feel more true, not less. I stood up at that dinner table and I looked at Camille and I said that I loved her, and that I had loved her for longer than I had admitted to myself, and that I understood if she needed more time and I would wait as long as she needed, but that I was asking her, clearly and without any more hesitation, if she would marry me. Camille was quiet for what felt like a very long time. Then she looked at Zoe, who was sitting with her hands folded and her chin raised with the satisfaction of someone who has successfully managed a situation that needed managing. Camille looked back at me. And she said yes. Simply, directly, completely, yes. Zoe picked up her fork, said finally under her breath, and went back to her roast chicken as if she had not just rearranged all of our lives at the dinner table on a Saturday evening in January. I laughed. Camille laughed. And the sound of it filled that kitchen the way laughter fills a room that has been waiting a long time for exactly that sound. We married the following April, on a Saturday in Hyde Park. Small ceremony, the people who mattered, Zoe standing between us at the front of the room refusing to choose a side because she did not have to and she knew it, and because she was the reason we were standing there at all and she knew that too. I looked at my daughter between me and the woman who had brought her into this world, the woman I had wronged and lost and been forgiven by and fallen in love with inside the same house, in that order, and I understood that no version of this story that I could have planned would have arrived here. Only the true version arrived here. Only the version that moved through every hard and painful and unlikely thing without looking for a shortcut. I am not telling you this story because I want credit for anything. I do not deserve credit. I deserve exactly what I received, the full weight of the truth, held without comfort, until I understood it completely. What I am telling you is that the truth has a way of finding the surface no matter how long it has been buried. I am telling you that forgiveness is real, and that it is the most serious and costly and freely given gift one person can offer another. I am telling you that families are built from all kinds of materials, and that the strongest ones are often built from the pieces that should not have fit together but did. Zoe is studying medicine now. She says she understood from a young age that the most important things happen in the body before we understand them in the mind, a blood type, a feeling in a hospital chair, a certainty that arrives before the evidence. I told her that sounds like her. Camille told her it sounds exactly right. I did not tell her that she also understood, at a dinner table in January, that some things need a push. She already knows that. She has always known that. And in the house in Hyde Park, on the back porch where I once explained adoption to a 4-year-old over juice boxes and she asked for macaroni and I said yes and it was enough, we sit together in the evening sometimes, the three of us, and watch the light move over the neighborhood, and we do not need to explain anything at all. Because everything that needed to be said has been said. What remains is the living of it. And that, I have learned, is the best part. This has been Hidden Intent Stories. If this story reached you, if it reminded you that truth finds its way home no matter how long the road, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Hidden Intent Stories for new stories every week. We will see you next time.